Good evening. My name is Connie F, and I'm a grateful Christian who is in recovery for codependency and other character defects. Hey, let us pray. Father God, thank you for this night. I ask for your Holy Spirit to be present upon us tonight. Allow your grace to flow freely through the words I will share, so whoever is present will receive in Jesus' name. I was born in Pontiac, Michigan in 1974. I was raised for the first 5 years by my grandmother and mother. My mother kept my birth from my father for unknown reasons. My first memory by my father was when they were getting married. I was about 5.5 years old. We began our little life in Oxford, Michigan, 5 years after my dad was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army. I somehow felt like the pieces were somewhat fitting into place. I finally had a dad. The time I had with my dad, it was like a craving that I longed for. I held that time closely in a small little box in my heart. After my father was discharged from the Army, he was dealing with his own demons, so he drank a lot. My dad was a calm drunk. He never displayed anger or violence. That was a role that was reserved for my mother. My mother grew increasingly angry with my father, and I believe my mother just didn't know how to cope with life issues, being a new mom and away from her mother, plus the chaos of living with my uncle. For years, I was content until my mother decided to move back with her mother and brother to Springfield, Tennessee. It was now my mother and me living with my grandmother and uncle. Shortly after us coming back, my grandmother began drinking daily. My uncle had the run of the house. He always liked to emphasize how he ran the show. My uncle had his own demons, and he wasn't able to hide them. My uncle thrived on control and instilling fear in my grandmother and my mother. He may not have realized it, but I too feared him in his rage. Slowly, my mother began to find her comfort with a bottle of pills and became absent, even while being in plain view. I was too young to understand why we left my father and returned to Tennessee. I could never understand why no thought went into any choices the adults were making. No one thought of anyone else's feelings or had any consideration to what I was personally dealing with in my childhood or youth. So here it was, my mother popping pills, my grandmother drinking heavily, and my uncle running the show. My uncle began standing his ground to enforce new rules on how money would be spent and what would happen in the household. A typical weekend, there were parties at our house, drugs, alcohol, and knives. This went on in my life from the age of 5 until 18. There was a few breaks from him when we would move a few times to get away, but my uncle, he always managed to find his way back into the doors by smooth-talking my mother as well as my grandmother. She loved her son unconditionally. This is one vivid memory I have when my uncle dramatically affected my life. My mother went out one night and left me with my grandmother. My uncle came in late, messed up on drugs, and looking for money. When he had no luck, he began to tear the house apart, literally, and beating my grandmother. He called the police to say his sister left her daughter with a drunken grandmother, and he had came home to find this. So the police came out, and they took me away from the situation immediately, and I found myself sleeping in a stranger's house that night. I was in foster care. This is a very vivid memory that I can remember as if it was yesterday. I am so grateful for the resilience of being a child. I was ripped away from 2 people who loved me. I was put someplace where I didn't know anyone or even recognize the town. I had fear of the unknown and anger for what had been happened, for what was being allowed to happen to me. So I wasn't able to comprehend why, not understanding that it was in my best interest. So my mother and my grandmother would have to straighten up to prove to the Department of Children and Families that they were fit to care for me. I was finally able to go back home. We lived in Tennessee for a few more years, and my mother again felt the need to make another change. She was wanting to escape my uncle's control, and she had met a man who convinced her to move to Texas. We packed what we could in a suitcase and set out on a road trip to Amarillo, Texas, leaving an already bad situation and heading to one that would even be worse. I don't remember many details, probably due to me repressing these memories. My mom had gotten a waitressing job where she had to work the graveyard shift. And on these nights, this man began to molest me. And he molested me several times. I was already withdrawn due to the chaotic drama that was happening in my life. I didn't know how to address this, so I didn't say anything to my mother. This is where grace first appeared in my life. God knew what I could handle and what I couldn't handle. Suddenly, one day, my mom packed our bags and we left. We hitchhiked the interstate back to Tennessee. Up to this very day, I don't know if she found out or if she listened to that still small voice telling her to go. After a long trip, we finally made it home, right back to the chaos we so desperately seemed to always be trying to get away from. The funny thing was, I had never been happier. The life that I knew, the drunken nights, parties, fights, and controlling situations, I felt safe here. I didn't have to worry about someone physically harming me or touching me. I learned at a very young age how to be codependent. It helped me to be accepted and to control situations in my life. This is where the irony comes in, because I said I will never grow up to be like my family. Fast forward, by the age of 19, I knew it all. I had 2 jobs in my own place where I did whatever I wanted. I had control over my life. Do you see a pattern? I was always the helping hand, shoulder to lean on, good daughter who helped paying living expenses, etc. I would put others in their turmoils right on my shoulders to hold and carry. Could you see how codependent I had become? Just like my mother and grandmother. Meanwhile, I was lacking my own feelings and emotions. I always felt lost, and there was a void in my life I could not fill. I hadn't yet learned about the 12 steps of recovery. At the age of 21, I met the father of my first 3 children. I had my first son, Gabriel, at the age of 21, my second son, Samuel, at 23, and 7 years later, I had my oldest daughter, Angelina. My codependency led me to a man who was very controlling, abusive, emotionally, physically, and verbally. He was just like my uncle, an alcoholic and a drug addict. I put myself and my kids through this for 10 years. I believe this is where step 1 and 2 plays a role in my life. Finally, I was brave enough to admit I couldn't do this anymore, and I was relying on my own inner self at that time to guide me. I told him to leave without knowing where the extra money would come from to pay our bills. There was a bunch of what ifs flooding my mind. This is where faith in step 3 and 4 was entering the picture for me. I kept telling myself for years, I have to stay with this man for financial reasons. I was done. I had had enough of the way I was living, but I didn't know where the help would come from. Something was speaking to me, telling me, trust. And soon as I surrendered, peace came upon me. I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with my 3 children, waiting for my house to be built. I was accepted into the Habitat for Humanity program in 2003, and it took me 3 years to complete. With my sweat equity hours and all the money, I met my neighbor, Chris. He kept to himself, but when he would see me and my kids, he made a point to talk. I could tell that there was genuine care for my kids as well as myself. His demeanor was like something that I had never seen in a man before. Chris had lost his job and did not have steady work to pay his bills, and I didn't yet know of his addiction problems. My helping habit came out, and I offered him to stay in the other bedroom. God was setting things up, I believe, even before I realized it. Chris moved in, and over time, a friendship blossomed into something more. I started to pray more to God, but they were rescue prayers. I always found myself asking for things. My relationship with God was on my terms. I maintained a good attitude and held a lot of emotion on the inside. I learned in the program we called it stuffing. I was a closet alcoholic who had no real relationship with my children, even though we shared the same roof. I lost my job in 2008 after 7 years. I so desperately wanted a quick fix. My fiance, Chris, his addiction was growing. Another low point in my life was the loss of our home and for filing for bankruptcy in 2010. We moved out into a rental property 250 feet down the road. I wanted a fresh start, but guess what? Nothing changed. We brought our old selves to the new house. I found a new job, so with Chris working, we were maintaining our bills. Yet our priorities were still way out of line. I was still drinking, and we were trying to help out our neighbors with their problems. I had already totaled 2 vehicles by driving drunk. God had definitely been with me on those nights when I was alone, because no harm came to no one. I found out I was pregnant after 1 year of living in the rental house. I was not looking forward to being pregnant at the age of 37. What was I going to do? I was angry at myself for allowing this. I told Chris that I was not going to go through another chaotic relationship. I finally realized how bad his addiction had become. I made my stand. I told Chris to leave and get help. Honestly, we both needed help. But at the time, I didn't know where it was going to come from. So in February of 2011, we took the kids to the Lee County Fair, where God made his presence very known to our family. Chris was approached by a man offering him a free meal for the family at a program called Celebrate Recovery. Chris accepted the tickets, and in a couple of weeks, he decided on a Friday night to come check out Celebrate Recovery. We came, we were warmly welcomed, and we kept coming back. Chris became comfortable in his new surroundings. This is where I learned the definition of being codependent, and I learned I wasn't the only one. You see, I came here for Chris, hoping that someone could either tell me how to fix his problem or that they could just fix his problem. We started attending every Friday night, large group and small groups. Chris for chemical dependency, and me, I went to codependency. We also attended Tuesday nights at Grace Community Center. I began to realize I needed to focus on my own issues. I heard someone say, "Let go and let God." So I was curious on how I was able to do that. After 6 months, we were here a minimum of 3 times a week: Tuesday small groups, Friday CR, plus church on Sunday. We also volunteered as a family on third Saturdays at the GCC. We took the family classes and joined Grace Church. I began to see a purpose for my life, and while attending groups, I formed friendships. I felt at home here. God is amazing. He got our attention with something as simple as a meal ticket and a conversation. Remember those steps I was talking about earlier? They were finally making sense. I found a sponsor and dedicated a year to the step study. Then I made my walk to Emmaus. On my walk, I would just say, I allowed Jesus to release the chains when I walked out of that camp that weekend. I was a free woman. After my walk, I was so thirsty to use all that I had gained. I wanted to spread it like wildfire. I helped facilitate a step study for the next year alongside a good friend. I helped out with Grace Kids on Friday nights. Then I was asked to help a sweet friend facilitate one of the CR codependent rooms. The blessings were flowing so fast for me, I couldn't keep track. Chris and I was ready to be in union with God, so we planned our wedding, and it was on March 16th of 2013. My CR and step study friends, they helped me plan and celebrate our wedding. Some of them are here tonight. I'm so thankful that God is in the business of restoring lives. Our relationship with one another was growing increasingly better with the help of several marriage classes, plus we were mentored by another couple for almost a year. God was moving things into order for Chris and myself. I would pray to God, asking him for his wisdom and knowledge, because I was feeling I still needed to see where I was requiring growth. Chris really loved doing ministry, and we both like to involve our children wherever we serve. I had helped with Grace Kids, but I didn't see where I could fit in with Chris's new job with the teens at the Shores campus. I asked God, where will I fit in? God was showing me slowly as he was giving me wisdom and setting me up for more changes to come in my life. I had worked in the medical field for almost 17 years, and for several years I was feeling like I wasn't supposed to be there anymore. In June of 2015, I attended the women's luncheon here, and I began thinking about starting a cleaning business. This idea grew into a plan that would set me up financially for what was yet to come for my family. Remember when I asked for knowledge? God continued to provide. I prayed for God's direction. I began doing the University of the Holy Spirit study. It is simply a daily commitment to read the Bible, write down key verses, journal your observation and how it applies to your life, and then pray. I did the UHS with a close friend, and I still do. And I grew a more intimate relationship with God. And God was knocking down those walls of doubt. I started the UHS for just a few minutes each day, and now it has grown beautifully into close to 2 hours. My UHS study friend is also really involved with missions, so we talked about me going on a trip to Costa Rica. I asked God to help me to discern his will. I accepted the opportunity to go to Costa Rica with a team of people. I was also getting ready to take a big leap of faith. Due to some personal circumstances, I decided to quit my job to homeschool my 2 girls, Angelina, 13, and Sienna, 5. I prayed for God to either take this thought from me or to guide me through it. I gave my notice in April of 2016, and my last day was July 1st of 2016. In October of 2016, I got to experience the love of Costa Rica while working alongside Christ's people and getting to experience love from the children. The Costa Rican people are full of smiles, and love radiates off their faces. It was such a blessing for me. Plus, I got to experience early mornings with God. This was a test of faith for me. I know God was getting me ready. When I returned home, I got to be the Spanish instructor at the homeschool co-op we joined. Again, God was writing the script of my life, setting things up that were unforeseen by me. I was asked in February of 2017 if I could be a backup translator on a short mission trip to Nicaragua with our pastors. I was elated that anyone would think of me to help our pastors and to team alongside the pastors in Nicaragua. God was giving me more of what I had asked for. Those baby steps, they were turning into big girl steps, and I could feel God stretching me. The year I took off to teach my girls, it grew me confidence. I want to share a scripture that my daughter Angelina shared with me when I was facing doubt. And it's from 2 Timothy 1:7. For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. By someone sharing the message with me, as well as using the tools in my toolbox, God has equipped me for his purpose. I am a woman of worth. I am a mother, a wife, a friend, and most importantly, a child of God. God is constantly changing me, and I'm learning that it's never done. I will continue to do God's work to the best of my ability. I have applied the 12 steps in my life to the best of my ability. And I know He rejoices in a life that chooses to be saved and chooses life rather than control and other character defects. God has saved and forgiven me. He will never leave me. I have accepted my big girl responsibilities. I can't stay in my comfort zone, and I'm not in control. I have let go and let God. For the newcomer, thank you for staying to hear how God has worked in my life. You are so important, and you have a story that is waiting to be told. Don't get discouraged and give up. Look up and allow God to meet you right where you are. I would like to leave you with a passage from Jeremiah. I've taken on this verse for my life verse. It says so much in just one sentence, and it couldn't be any clearer for me in my walk today. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good and not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. So never let your fire burn out. Even the smallest light can bring direction in the darkness. Thank you for letting me share.